The morning sun was streaming across the Good Morning America set, casting its warm light across the polished glass table and glossy backdrop of Times Square. The audience was lively, the band upbeat, and Michael Strahan flashed his trademark smile as the cameras rolled live across millions of American homes. "It's a very special day here on GMA," Michael said smoothly, turning to the cameras with practiced ease. "Joining us now, one of the greatest actors of all time, a two-time Academy Award winner, a man whose intensity on screen has left audiences breathless for decades. Please welcome
Denzel Washington."
The studio audience burst into applause, some whistling, others clapping furiously as Denzel stepped onto the set. He wore a simple dark blazer over a fitted shirt, sharp trousers, and polished shoes. His stride was deliberate, slow but confident, his presence commanding even before he spoke a word. Michael extended his hand, smiling wide. "Denzel Washington, everybody!" The handshake was firm, too firm. The cameras caught the subtle tension in their grips, Denzel's stare steady, Michael's grin twitching at the edges. Denzel nodded to the crowd, gave a small wave, and lowered himself into the chair opposite Michael. The applause died down. The atmosphere shifted, not unfriendly, but charged, like static before a storm. Michael leaned in, his smile wide but his tone carrying a faint sharpness. "Now, Denzel, you've been at this for a long time. Decades of legendary roles, cops, gangsters, soldiers, heroes. But I've got to ask, do you ever worry people just see you as intense? Like maybe, just maybe, you're too serious all the time?" The audience chuckled. Denzel didn't. His expression didn't change. He clasped his hands on the table, tilted his head slightly, and after a pause replied in his low, commanding voice, "Better to be serious than to be shallow." The audience gasped, then clapped, some laughing nervously. Michael's grin faltered, just for a second, before he forced out a laugh. "Oh, I see. We're starting strong today, huh?" The tension was unmistakable. This wasn't going to be the easy, friendly morning interview Michael had expected. Michael shuffled his notes, glancing at the audience, then back at Denzel. He leaned forward, his smile stretching wider. "Come on, Denzel. I mean, you're legendary, no doubt about it. But don't you think it's time to loosen up? Show us a lighter side? Maybe a rom-com? People want to see you laugh." The audience chuckled again, nodding along. Denzel leaned back slowly, folding his arms across his chest, his eyes never leaving Michael. His reply came calm but sharp. "I've spent 40 years showing people every side of me. If they didn't notice, that's on them, not me." The crowd erupted, claps, cheers, whistles echoing through the studio. Michael chuckled awkwardly, tugging at his tie. Fair enough," he said, trying to keep control. "But you've got to admit, people still see you as the serious guy. Even now you've got that look, like I should confess something to you." The audience laughed, but thinner this time. Denzel's lips curled into the faintest smile, but his eyes stayed cold. "Maybe you should." The studio exploded. Gasps, shrieks of laughter, clapping so loud it drowned out the band's little musical sting. Michael blinked, his grin faltering again. He tried to laugh it off, waving at the audience. "Oh man, you see what I'm dealing with? He's intense even in real life." Denzel leaned forward, his voice steady, his tone even sharper now. "I'm not intense, Michael. I'm real. There's a difference." The crowd roared louder, some whistling, others clapping wildly. Michael shifted in his chair, his grin flickering nervously. He tried a different angle. All right. Let's put it this way. You've been in the game so long, people say you're difficult, demanding. You've heard it, right? Does that bother you?" The air went still. The audience leaned forward, sensing danger. Denzel tilted his head again, his voice dropping even lower. "Difficult? I call it discipline. I call it respect for the craft. If someone wants to call that difficult, maybe they just don't understand what work looks like." The eruption was instant. Cheers, claps, whistles shook the studio. Some in the crowd stood, clapping wildly. Michael's grin faltered again, his eyes darting toward the producers. He shuffled his papers, his hand trembling slightly, then forced a laugh. "Wow, okay. I see you came to play." But it wasn't a game anymore. The tension was real. Denzel Washington had drawn a line, and Michael Strahan had just stepped over it. The applause from Denzel's last line still echoed, but the energy inside the studio had shifted. This wasn't warm and cheerful GMA anymore. It felt like a courtroom, an arena. Michael Strahan straightened his posture, forcing his grin back on as the producers gestured wildly off-camera, signaling him to move on, but he couldn't resist. "Denzel," Michael said, trying to keep his tone light, "don't get me wrong.
I respect you.
Everyone here does. But you've got to admit, sometimes you come across as intimidating. Even now, you've got the audience looking like they're about to get scolded." The crowd chuckled nervously, some glancing at Denzel as though waiting for his reaction. Denzel leaned back in his chair, arms folded, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he leaned forward, locking his eyes on Michael. "I don't intimidate anyone, Michael. People intimidate themselves when they know they don't measure up." The studio gasped, then erupted in wild applause and whistles. Michael blinked, his smile cracking, the audience's roar drowning his laugh. He held up his hands, gesturing to the crowd. See, this is what I mean. He's terrifying and he doesn't even raise his voice." Denzel didn't smile. He let the silence drag until the laughter died, then said in his calm, gravelly tone, "No, I don't raise my voice because I don't need to. Truth speaks loud enough." The audience erupted again, clapping wildly, some standing, the noise deafening. Michael laughed awkwardly, shuffling his cards, his hands visibly trembling. He tried to recover, leaning closer, his tone sharper now. Okay, truth-teller Denzel. But let's be honest here. You've had a career full of praise, full of awards, full of accolades. You're at the top. Don't you think you can lighten up now? Just give people the charm instead of the lecture? The air grew still. The laughter died down. The camera zoomed tight on Denzel's face as he leaned in, his voice lower, deadlier. "You don't tell me how to be me. You do your job, Michael. I'll do mine." The explosion from the audience rattled the rafters. Clapping, cheering, whistles cut through the tension. Michael chuckled nervously, tugging at his tie, but his smile was fading fast. He pressed again, his tone more defensive. "Hey, I'm just asking the questions people want to hear. That's my job, man." Denzel didn't blink. His voice boomed through the mic, calm but merciless. "Now, your job is to ask questions, not to tell me who I should be." The crowd screamed, clapped, stomped, some chanting his name. Michael looked rattled now, his grin forced, his eyes flicking toward the producers, who waved frantically for him to change the subject. But Michael leaned back, shaking his head, trying to laugh it off. All right, he muttered. "Don't bite my head off." Denzel leaned in one last time, his eyes locked on Michael. His voice cut through the chaos, steady, precise. "Then stop putting it on the chopping block." The studio went wild. Gasps, cheers, whistles thundered through the room. Michael froze, his face red, his notes slipping slightly from his hands. The cameras caught everything. The crack in his composure, the smirk that no longer reached his eyes. The confrontation was no longer playful.
It was a battle.
And Denzel had just landed another decisive blow. The studio was electric now, buzzing with an energy that no morning show producer could control. The audience was louder, bolder, feeding off Denzel's sharp lines and Michael's faltering attempts to keep control. Michael shuffled his cards again, dropping one to the floor. The audience laughed, but not kindly. He forced a grin, leaning back toward Denzel. "You're a tough interview, you know that? Some people would say impossible." Denzel leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed, his voice calm, unflinching. "Impossible for who? For someone who wants to turn honesty into a joke? Yeah, maybe." The crowd roared again, clapping and whistling, their cheers louder than ever. Michael's laugh cracked as he gestured toward the audience. "See what he's doing? He's turning you all against me." But Denzel didn't laugh. He leaned forward, his voice lower now, cutting through the noise with terrifying calm. "I don't have to turn them against you, Michael. You're doing that yourself." The audience screamed, clapped, stomped their feet. Some chanted his name, Denzel.
Denzel.
The chant echoing off the walls. Michael raised his hands, trying to regain control. All right, enough. This is Good Morning America, not Good Morning Denzel." The crowd laughed loudly at that, but it wasn't the laugh Michael wanted. It was mocking, cruel, and he knew it. He tried to push back harder, his voice sharp. "You're not the host here, Denzel. You don't run this show." Denzel leaned in close, his stare unflinching. His words came slow, deliberate, final. "Then act like a host, not a heckler." The eruption was volcanic. The audience screamed, cheered, clapped so loud the microphones cracked. Some stood on their feet, fists in the air. Michael's face turned red, his grin gone completely. He slammed his hand on the desk, his voice cracking. "Enough! Enough of this!" The crowd roared louder, some booing, others cheering wildly. The chant of Denzel
Denzel.
thundered again, drowning Michael's voice. The escalation had reached its peak. Michael Strahan had lost control of his own stage. Denzel Washington owned the room. The chant of Denzel
Denzel.
rolled through the Good Morning America studio like a tidal wave. The audience was louder than the band, louder than the hosts, louder than anything the producers could control. It was no longer a morning show audience. It was a crowd in revolt. Michael Strahan sat stiff in his chair, his notes scattered across the table, his trademark grin completely gone. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched. Every attempt to laugh it off had failed. His eyes darted to the producers off stage, who were frantically waving their arms, signaling him to cut to commercial. But Strahan shook his head. He wasn't ready to give up. He leaned forward, his voice sharper, angrier. "Denzel, enough. This isn't your stage. This isn't your pulpit. You don't come on Good Morning America and hijack the show." The audience gasped, then booed loudly, the sound rattling the walls. Denzel didn't flinch. He leaned forward, his voice low, calm, devastating. "I didn't hijack anything, Michael. You lost control all on your own." The crowd exploded. Cheers, whistles, claps, stomps. Some people stood, fists in the air, chanting his name again. Strahan slammed his hand on the desk, his voice cracking. "This is my show, not yours! You don't get to disrespect me like this in front of millions." The studio roared again, some booing Strahan, others cheering Denzel. The atmosphere was pure bedlam. Denzel leaned back, crossing his arms, his voice dropping lower. "Respect goes both ways. If you don't give it, you don't get it. Simple." The eruption was deafening. The audience screamed, cheered, clapped wildly. The other hosts on the panel shifted uncomfortably, whispering nervously, some glancing at the producers for help. Strahan's face was red now, his voice strained. "I've had enough of this. You don't come in here and lecture me on respect. You're a guest, Denzel." "A guest?" Denzel leaned forward again, his eyes locked on Strahan's, his words slow, final. "Then maybe you should learn how to treat one." The silence that followed was suffocating. Then the audience erupted again, louder than ever, the sound of clapping, cheering, chanting, drowning out Strahan's protests. The chant grew louder, pounding like a drumbeat. "Denzel!"
Denzel.
Michael slammed his papers down, his voice cracking in frustration. "Security!" The word sent shockwaves through the room. The audience gasped. Some booed loudly, others screamed in disbelief. From the wings, two security guards in dark suits rushed onto the stage. The cameras swung to catch them, the chaos so intense the producers were yelling into headsets to cut the feed. Strahan pointed at Denzel, his hand trembling with fury. "Get him out of here, now!" The audience shrieked, some booing Strahan so loudly his words were drowned, others clapping and cheering wildly for Denzel. The noise was overwhelming. Denzel didn't move. He stayed seated, calm, collected, his arms folded. He looked at the guards approaching him, then turned back to Michael. His voice, when it came, was steady, calm, deadly. "You don't have to throw me out. I'll leave myself. But remember this, Michael. You'll never silence me." The crowd exploded again, screams and cheers rattling the rafters. The guards flanked him but didn't touch him. The camera zoomed wide to capture the chaos. Strahan red-faced, shouting, the audience split between boos and cheers, and Denzel Washington rising slowly from his chair, towering, unbothered. The studio was in chaos. The audience was on its feet, some chanting Denzel's name, others booing so loudly it shook the set. The band sat frozen, their instruments untouched, waiting for a cue that never came. The co-hosts whispered nervously, their faces pale, trying to plaster smiles that wouldn't stick. Denzel stood tall at the center of the storm, calm and unflinching. The guards stayed close but never touched him. He adjusted his jacket, glanced back at the audience, and then turned to Michael one last time. "You wanted a show, Michael. You got one. But don't forget, the people decide who they respect. And right now, they've made their choice." The audience screamed. Cheers, whistles, stomps, chants echoing through the studio. Strahan's face was pale now, his grin gone completely, his eyes darting nervously toward the cameras. Denzel stepped toward the wings, his stride deliberate, steady. The guards followed, but he didn't need them. He didn't look rushed, he didn't look rattled. He looked in control. At the edge of the stage, he paused. He turned back toward the cameras, his voice booming one last time into the mic. "Respect isn't given by a title. It's earned by your actions. Remember that. The eruption was volcanic. The audience screamed, clapped, stomped their feet, some chanting louder than before. The noise was so deafening the producers had no choice. The feed cut. No outro. No smooth transition. No band playing over the chaos. Just a sudden, sharp blackout that left millions of viewers at home staring at their screens in stunned silence. The final image burned into memory. Michael Strahan, red-faced and shaken at his own desk, while Denzel Washington walked off calm and unshaken, his words still echoing through the chaos.